So again, thank you for joining us to celebrate this exhibition, You Gotta Meet Mr. Pierce. The exhibition features this new exciting children's book written by Chiquita Mullins Lee and Carmella Van Vleet that was published by Kokila in January. Introduces a young audience to the art of Elijah Pierce, one of America's most extraordinary folk artists whose wood carvings capture passion, skill, whimsy, and a unique approach to storytelling. So tonight we will hear from illustrator Jennifer Mack-Watkins and documentary filmmaker Jeffrey Wolf, who will talk about their collaboration in working on this book and their shared commitment to preserving and promoting the legacy of Black artistic excellence. So Jennifer Mack-Watkins is an accomplished artist who is especially skilled in the technique of mahanga, the traditional form of Japanese woodblock printmaking. She has a BA in studio arts from Morris Brown College and a master's in art education from Tufts University, a MFA in printmaking from the Pratt Institute. In the summer of 2015, Mack-Watkins was selected to participate in the Mahanga Innovation Laboratory Artist in Residence program in Japan and was a Joan Mitchell Foundation 2015 Emerging Artist nominee. Her work is collected by major museums throughout the country and has been covered widely in leading publications. You Gotta Meet Mr. Pierce is her first children's book, and her illustrations capture the sense of wonder in Pierce's work and inspire their own sense of artistic creativity. And I welcome you, if you haven't seen the exhibition yet, I welcome you to view it either after this, during the reception, as we walk out. It'll be open until 8. Jeffrey Wolf is a director and producer and film editor and acclaimed documentary filmmaker. A graduate of The Ohio State University, Jeffrey has been passionate about promoting and preserving the legacy of American folk artists. Through his company, Breakaway Films, he has produced films exploring the lives and careers of our artists, including Elijah Pierce, Martin Ramirez, James Castle, and Bill Traylor, to share their artistic genius with new and larger audiences. And their talk today will be moderated by Nicole Simpson, Associate Curator of Prints and Drawings, and the organizer of this exhibition at the Zimmerli. So after their conversation, which I think will last about 40 minutes, we'll follow by a Q&A from the audience, and we invite you all to join us for a reception and a book sale made possible by Source of Knowledge Bookstore in Newark, just upstairs in the lobby. Please also take time, as I said, in the Devoson Gallery, which will be on view at the museum through July 30th if you don't have a chance to see it after today's event. We'd also like to thank PNC, who have generously supported the exhibition and our event through their Grow Up Great grant. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer, Jeffrey, and Nicole.
Thank you, Brandon, and thanks to both of you, and thank you to our audience for coming here tonight. So I want to talk about your wonderful collaboration on this new book. So I thought we would start with Jennifer. When did you first learn you would be illustrating this book? What did you know about Elijah Pierce, and how did that lead you to Jeffrey?
I didn't know anything about Elijah Pierce at all. When Random House came to me, they came with a manuscript, and it's like, okay, we want to make this book about Elijah Pierce, and we want you to illustrate it because you are a wood carver, and so is Elijah Pierce. So then I think for the first couple months, I just spent time researching, and I fell across Jeffrey Wolf's film, 1974. Black and white. I wasn't even born yet. I was born in 1979. So it looked very foreign, but then it felt familiar because I felt like I was able to, through his lens, be able to understand who Elijah Pierce was as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a self-taught artist, as a community builder, as an artist. And so I was able to capture all that within this short film that might have been under 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
It was a very short film.
We'll see a little bit of it tonight.
Yeah, so I was able to capture all that just by the film. And then from there, I started scurrying around, and I was like, okay, I had to find his information. So I have to email, I need to find out how I can contact this filmmaker and find out how he can help me in making this project happen. So then I went to my editor. I said, look, I found this film. I was giving them links, and I said, I found the filmmaker. And so I went and emailed Jeffrey, and then he actually responded back. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, okay, now what? And so then from there, we set up a Zoom call because there happened to be another filmmaker, Carolyn Allport, who did another short film. And so I had 2 short films to help me figure out that happening. This is during COVID. And so we did a Zoom call, and so we were able to meet for the first time, not in person, but this is my first time ever meeting Jeffrey, ever since we even made the book. So it's really like I know him, because I would call or talk to him or email him. And then as I got the chance to develop a relationship with both of them, then they started giving me all these photographs that they took, not just digital, but they were like photographs that they took like the old school way, developed film and rich grays and dark tones and light tones. And so I was able to take all those photographs, put that in Google Drive, look at those, study Elijah. How did he dress? How did he stand? How tall was he? Very tall. How did he dress? Very well dressed. And so all that I could find all the information out from the photographs, the films. And then Jeffrey even gave me more. He's like, I got more things. And he kept giving me more and more. I said, okay, great. So then he gave me artifacts, and the artifacts had letters that he wrote to people, business cards, like things he collected from church, things he would put on his wall. So all that was all documented by photographs in the Google Drive. So I took all that. I said, well, now I got to start making the book. And so after tons of research, then I had to study, his character and look at his facial structure. But all that was because of the work that Carolyn and Jeffrey was able to give me. And of course, Ohio had a really great database. So just databases and talking to both of them were able to get me to this point of making the book. Long story short.
So a lot of research.
A lot of research.
So Jeffrey, before we get into your archive, would you like to share how you first met Elijah?
Oh yeah. So I went to college during a pretty turbulent time. It was, I think, the year of Kent State, or the year after Kent State, that I first met Elijah. And I was a film and photography major, but I used to walk through the art building every day on my way to other classes because it was just something I was interested in. And one day, in a gallery about the size of through those doors, there was this 80-something-year-old man sitting there, well-dressed, a vest, a tie, a pearl pin, and all these carvings on the wall. And so my botany class went out the window, and I spent 3 hours with him walking me through and telling me the story behind each one. And then way led to way, and he had a shop downtown Columbus, and I had a little brown Volvo. A friend used to think I was buying drugs when he would see my car down there. But parked in, sorry about that, Columbus, but it was a tough town at the time. But Elijah had this shop, and I would go down and help him by photographing all the work, because I was noticing in between haircuts, a lot of people would come in and buy things from him, and then he would lose all track of it. So I made this agreement with him that I would just come down once a week and take pictures of the work as a way of preserving it. Who knew that would turn into anything ultimately? But I've learned since that it's things come around.
Yes. So can you tell us a little more, and for those that don't know, what was his barber shop, and how did that relate to his artistic career and all?
Well, so he was born, I think, in 1892 in Baldwin, Mississippi. And, oh yeah, that's what I looked like then. Scary, isn't it? He was born, then he was the son of a preacher who was, and a cotton farmer who had probably been an ex-slave. He didn't take much to the land, and while his brothers were out in the fields, he was carving, and his father had given him a knife, and he was sort of playing around. And when he had a chance to leave Baldwin, he learned how to be a barber. And in those days, if you were black, you couldn't have a white person cut your hair. You needed a black person to cut your hair, right? So he figured that was a good trade that he could take with him. And also, barbers pulled people's teeth, and they did everything, and he was a great baseball player, evidently. And I was telling Michael before, there was one carving called, I'm not sure it's in your book, but it's called Elijah Escapes the Mob. Is that in the book? Right. So he was in Tupelo, Mississippi, playing baseball, and a kid somebody had been killed and they were blaming it on a black kid, and the kid looked a lot like Elijah. So the police told him to get out of town, otherwise he was going to get lynched, basically. So the carving is called Elijah Escapes the Mob, and it's him with his baseball cap flying off and a rabbit running next to him. You know, like, get out of the way, I'm coming through, is the way Elijah would tell the story. And that was the first sort of moment where he realized he could tell stories about his life. Oh yeah, so then he got married, his wife died, he went north in the Great Migration, which a lot of people did, and then ended up in Danville, Illinois, where he had another wife. And it's interesting that you mentioned the entrepreneurial part, because that was a big part of who he was. He went to Columbus, opened up his own shop. But during that time, maybe you could go to the one more.
Next one.
Keep going. This. So he used to go around and give sermons of using the work as examples. And what's cool about this particular one, I have a lot that are empty, but this one actually has the advertisement of where to come and what to do, and so evidently they would do this, and they would preach, and then they would sell little pieces to people along the way, and it's just kind of it's the man who carves his sermons in wood. Behold. I never heard about the quartet singing or the good music, but it seemed interesting. So, so then he became a lay minister himself, and he would preach in the church using a piece, and he would usually use a piece that he made for a specific member of the church. So all through Columbus, there's work that he had given to individual families. Some of those people have passed, and some of that is kind of on the market, I guess. But so when I would visit his house, he'd be dressed in his finest, reading the Sunday funnies, and just like a normal guy. He was just this great guy. He also he became sort of I never really had a grandfather. He sort of became like my surrogate grandfather. Taught me how to carve. I cut myself the first time. That kind of thing.
And so I'm just going to go back so people can see. So his barber shop also served as his studio. So if you went there to get your hair cut, you would see all of his
it was a
art.
2-door building. This was the barbershop side, and then the other side was his gallery. And then between haircuts, you would see him doing this. It's actually a good side-by-side. And do you have the one at the barber chair in the barber chair? Oh yeah, this is kind of, I found this today in my collection of things, a barber chair that he carved. But he had great skill. I mean, when you look at the kind of relief carvings that he did, it's a miracle. And he claims that, I used to see him draw like an outline, but he claims that he would look at the piece of wood and see an image in the wood and carve accordingly. Now, I've heard of Southern artists who, like, they'll take twigs or sticks or things that look like something to them, and they'll craft that into an object. But his was more sort of a visual understanding of, things were talking to him. And you'll also, in the little movie, you'll see that he was born with a veil across his face, which was known at the time as being an omen that you would be a special person.
And what is the estimate of how many works he made?
I don't know. I would say 6,000 would be, if I had to guess.
Extraordinary. And the largest collection is at the Columbus Museum.
Now it's at the Columbus Museum of Art, yeah. But a lot of people, go to the statue. So, long after he passed, long before right around the time he passed, I tried to get the Columbus Museum of Fine Arts to make his studio and shop a kind of national monument of sorts. They were very slow in that, and it got torn down. And the parking garage behind the statue is where the shop used to be. Paid Paradise and put up a parking lot. And but this is the statue that's there now. And this was kind of one of his sayings that he was very, he did several pieces for Your Life as a Book and Every Day as a Page. Yeah, what other kinds of things? I mean, it goes on and on.
So I'd love to show the short film. So can you tell us about the making of that?
Sure. This is just sort of an amalgam of a couple different things that I shot over the period of time. Some of it, he was part of the Corcoran Black Folk Art 1930 to 1980 show that was kind of a watershed show for Black artists at the time. Many artists, Bill Traylor, who we'll show you a little bit of later, came out of that show, became famous out of that show. And many, it's interesting, MoMA just did I know this is a broad description, but MoMA just did a show of Joseph Yoakum, who was in the Black Folk Art show. The High Museum in Atlanta just did a Nellie Mae Rose show, which was in the Black Folk Art show. William Hawkins has been, wasn't in the show, but he's been very well known, also from Columbus, Ohio. I keep looking at Chiquita because Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, so let's show the film. It's nice to see him speak, get a feeling for him.
I thank God for every good deed that's done in my body. Thank Him for life. Thank Him in the morning I get up, and thank Him when I lay down. So He and I in pretty good condition. There are lots of young men who have started carving after being around where I was. See, I barbered and I cut hair and cut wood too.
I know this is a question that you're asked a lot, but what really started you doing the works that you do? They're magnificent.
Well, I love a pocket knife, and I work all day for a pocket knife. So I like to carve, and it seemed like anything I liked, I could picture it in my mind, and I could just shut my eyes and seem like sometimes 6 months afterward I could carve it. And after I joined the church, I just got more interested in the work. And a preacher preach a sermon, I would carve a picture from that sermon. That happened when I was in my early 20s. Before I got out of school, I used to carve a lot of small animals and walking sticks and such as that. Sell them. Somebody sometime would buy one, sometime I just give it to you. Whatever I made, birds and hogs, cows, anything I saw that interested me, I would try to use it, make a picture of it. Sometimes somebody tell a story, and like you lead a horse to water and can't make him drink, or anything. So I could think of something that somebody would say, and I'd a picture for him just like as if I had a Kodak. But I just hope and pray that it will continue to be, a lot of people call it blessings, luck. But when God does something for you, it's true. Ain't no luck. It's a gift. And I treasure it. I guess I was born with a blessing. One old lady said, back in my days when I was born, they had people that couldn't have a doctor. Said the good Lord take care of the blessings. And said I was born with a veil over my face. So, that's that.
Yeah, so he was already like 82, 80, he died like a year or so later, so he was already a little feeble in the last part of this, but the first part was shot in the early 70s, the black and white stuff when I was a student.
So I'm curious, him getting such great recognition late in life, did he talk to you about his legacy and what he hoped for?
Yeah, he said if he had known, he would have bought a bigger hat. Yeah, you know, he was humble but self-assured. You know, I mean, it wasn't like he didn't say, "Oh, gee." You know, I think what you do find with a lot of artists like him, though, is they don't think they're doing it. In his case, it was the Lord who was sort of doing that. You know, like once he kind of gave up his, you know, his sort of iterant kind of way, he became very religious and, you know, so.
So Jennifer, this was an extraordinary archive you had access to and source of knowledge about Elijah. So can you tell us, how did you start taking this research that you did, combining it with the wonderful story, and to begin creating your illustrations?
Well, first, like a lot of guidance, because it's my first time ever making a book. So I was like, okay, well, I usually just make work that's on a wall. You take it down, you put it up. Someone wants to put it in the show, you send it out, you ship it out. So I'm used to like doing exhibitions like that. But in the book form, I had to like be able to tell a story. And I think with me going through the whole process of bookmaking, from fine art to bookmaking, it helped me to realize that I already am a storyteller. Like I had almost forgotten that, you know, in high school, I was supposed to be an English teacher. So I was gonna be a writer, I was gonna be a children's book writer. And illustration artist was not even in the facet. I don't think I understood I was gonna be an artist until, I don't know, maybe even after grad school, because I was on this track of being a teacher, you know, teaching English art, teaching art, but I didn't really consider, you know, art as a thing till like after grad school. And so I think all I have to say is that, you know, I feel like it helped me to understand that I've always been a storyteller, and I think doing the bookmaking process, it helped me to understand that it's always been inside of me the whole time. I didn't realize I had another gift that I had to be able to share with the world. And so I think just understanding, like hearing his voice, having audio, having the footage, the archive, having the direction of Kokila at Random House to kind of guide me through the process, it helped me to figure out how to tell a story, but sequentially with the same character, which was very different. You know, I do a piece, it don't have to be the same, but in the book, it should look similar. The voice should look similar the whole time, right? So I feel like it was a challenge, and I was up for the challenge. And so just extending past a single work of art to like 34 pages, it was definitely interesting process, but I really enjoyed the whole process in itself. But I never really considered myself a storyteller, but I felt like I had stories to tell. And also I had to like just take time to think about my own upbringing. Coming from South Carolina, my mom had a salon for like 30 years, and so I started finding these other connections to Elijah. The more I learned about him, the more I was like, wow, my mom had a salon for 30 years, and she was an entrepreneur. She tried so many different businesses. She did tuxedos, she did the glamour shots, she did hair and nails, she had a barbershop on the other side. She totally just built a barbershop on the other side of the salon. And so, I mean, she was doing so many different things, and so there's so many similarities between Elijah Pierce and my own mom. And my dad was an electrician, so he was good with his hands. And so she's like, I want to build something. So they knock a wall down and they put another wall up. So they was always, you know, making this space for her, because that was her business, you know. But they worked together to make it be able to provide for us as a family. And my brother was a barber, so I spent a lot of time not really on that side because that was the male side. This is like the 90s. But before he got a barbershop, my mom let him cut hair at the house. And then my mom was like, well, there's too many people coming to the house. They would come to the garage to get their hair cut. And she's like, okay, I got to build you a barbershop. So then she built the barbershop on the other side of the salon, like in the neighborhood. And then I would just go over there to give them towels, or like sweep up the hair, you know, in between the clients, and just tell him he has a phone call. So I would go back and forth between, as a messenger, between the salon and the barbershop. So I just kind of delved deeper into my own upbringing.
You know, just to add, like, there's a part in the show that that you have, like, all the different faces of Elijah, you know, kind of mapped out, which is kind of an interesting part of this narrative, and obviously that's, being a filmmaker, his whole thing is such a narrative form, and I've started to learn that that's kind of a Southern thing too, and that narrative literature and narrative art really is something that took a long time to catch on in the United States. I mean, we got very hooked into abstract expressionism and all these other things, and that kind of narrative art took a long time to gestate. And then now, I mean, I don't know exactly what to call it. I don't really want to call it folk art, but self-taught or outsider, whatever label you want to put on it. It's showing that there's an importance to that, keeping that story going. And you do that really nicely in the book, so that's great. It's kind of a great thing to see. And even though his little visor, his little green visor always made me laugh. You kind of got perfect. Interesting that this elephant, just as an aside, showed up recently in a collection, and it was just exhibited at the Smithsonian Museum of American Art.
Oh, wow. So can you tell us how you sort of took the photograph into creating your own version?
Yeah, well, I think we decided as a team between the editors and art director that we needed to find the images that we were going to use throughout the book. So we had to decide, what we get the rights to, and so from there we had all the artwork, and we chose. And I think for some reason I wanted to do the elephant. I don't know what kind of drew me to the elephant, but maybe they can tell you more later. But I don't remember how I chose the elephant. But the whole thing is that I really wanted to capture not just the elephant, but I was really interested in capturing the studio, him, you're in his space, he's inviting you in. And so I did a couple, maybe I did 3 front cover sketches, but I kind of wanted to have a Mr. Rogers kind of thing. Mr. Rogers had his sweater on, and I wanted Elijah to be he's about to take off his shoe, like Mr. Rogers, but he's carving, with his legs crossed, just like Mr. Rogers. And so I felt like I wanted it to be inviting, and I wanted the book to be inviting and have the perspective of how the child sees Mr. Pierce and how he sees his work and how he sees the barbershop. So just kind of be able to educate people about what does it mean to be in a Black barbershop, because it's very, very different, very lively. There's music playing. Somebody's coming in trying to sell something. Somebody's trying to sell some lunch plates. If you're hungry, someone probably come by selling that too. But it's just alive, and there's so many stories that exchange throughout, in just any place where you have people coming together. But the Black barbershop is something very different. You come there, some people didn't even get their haircut. They just come and sit there all day and don't even get a haircut, but just want to hear the latest story, or they want to, pass on some gossip. So it's a very place you have to have the courage to step into this place. You can't just come, not really. Know what's going to happen, but you might be the one to be talked about. They might joke on you. There's a lot of different things and energy that goes in it. I wanted that same feeling of just the space of the barbershop, but also studio/gallery and this entrepreneurship to really come through in the book.
Funny, the first time I ever went into the shop, a father had brought his son in because his son had misbehaved, and he was punishing him by making him get a haircut. Because Elijah had these very sharp, tools, and I remember he shaved this kid's head completely. It was really something. But yeah, but you definitely, that's kind of what it's about.
Could you show some more? So can you tell us, for people that don't know, more about this process that you used, which is Japanese woodcut, and where you learned that technique, why you're so attracted to using this technique, and how it really just perfectly fit for this story?
Well, I chose Japanese woodblock because it's wood, and I was doing it prior. And I learned printmaking in general when I went to Morris Brown College. I learned how to carve just mostly lino, and I did some etchings, but I didn't do woodcuts until probably after graduate school. But I knew how to like develop my own style and technique and how it would change. How if I cut here, this looks like this. If I add this, then it does this. I take away, this would happen. So I understood the reaction of the wood and different surfaces when I carved. And so I thought it would be interesting to be able to not just do something I was comfortable with, but making the book, I wasn't always comfortable, but as I continued on, I felt more comfortable. But I wanted to do something that would combine not only the woodcut, and let me tell you more about it. So basically, you have like wood, and I use Shina wood, and you carve and you use different type of tools. My tools I get from Japan, and the paper comes from Japan. And so I use like sumi ink, calligraphy ink, and that's like, you can make the key block with that. So all the blacks, can you go back to, like, yeah, so all that I ink up first with black and white, just like with ink. And then you use, this makes more sense if I just show you, right? So, so like basically, the wood ends up looking like this. And then you put the sumi ink on, and then you brush on top everywhere. And then from there, you get your paper, and you have your registration that helps you put it in the same space every time. You carve the registration out so it doesn't go anywhere else but that same spot every time. And then you place the paper on the side, and then you use your, where's my Burin? Sorry. Then you use your Burin, and then it's like a circular disc, but it has like little balls to put pressure, and then you rub in a circular motion, and then you get the print. And so I did that 34 different times, carved 34 different blocks. And I got a chance to finish the last 14 in Penland, and it was cold in North Carolina, not too far from Asheville. And so it's a really beautiful medium, and I think I'm attracted to it because of the fact that I can change from a regular block of wood, and I can carve away just a little bit, just to get a relief that gives me enough to put ink on to roll up and print. And the way that it cuts, it's a soft wood, so you cut it and it comes out. It even curls over sometimes because it's so soft. And it's just very therapeutic from rubbing in a circular motion to carving out, and just seeing how wood can change just by you doing a couple cuts and taking it out totally. And it's a beautiful medium, so I knew that I wanted to be mixed media because I'm really attracted to illustrations that combine different materials. And so I think I like people like Ramira Bearden, I like Faith Ringgold, I like Matisse, right? So I like all different type of artists. I learned a lot of artists, a lot of art history, and I'm in the museum, so I'm gonna name some people's names. But I wanted to make sure that it was not only just something that I was attracted to, but I wanted to be able to use it as a way to educate young audiences or people who get the book and see, okay, this is watercolor, this is collage, this is printmaking. So I wanted to also use it as an education tool as well. And so I like the fact that I was able to combine the different materials together to make the illustrations in the book.
Yeah, I meant to ask about the collage part of it. How did you choose what you were going to carve and what you were going to collage in?
Well, I know we wanted to capture the fabric, so with the help of the art director, we placed that tie right where we want it to be, because it was black before, and then digitally we put in the tie in the pants. So I had to go to Joann's Fabric, and I got some fabrics. I had to I looked at some of like what would the prints be during that time period in 1974 or so, and so I know it couldn't be too bright, it couldn't be too modern, but I knew that a good triangle, you can't go wrong with a good triangle pattern. So, and you can't go wrong with the plaid. So I was looking for specifically something that looked like something he would wear. And then if you look, I think, yes, I looked at the time period, and then I think on a bigger barbershop scene with my daughter in it, I looked for patterns that might have been for what a child might wear. And I had to really look at, okay, well, what was happening in 1974? What was the style? Tennis shoes, dresses for children, how they dress, and I decided to put that pattern there. And so I spent a lot of time just studying different types of patterns and dress styles to make sure I captured, and hairstyles, right? So I missed that whole era. I mean, people are still wearing afros and like semi-fades, semi-afros in the 90s, but I had to really study, like if someone came to the barbershop, how would they choose what would the hairstyles they would choose from, And so that was here as well. The collage component, you can see on the chair, and then the wood, it's a paper that looks like wood. So that's collage as well. And I liked the fact that everything that you see, it's interesting when you go to the show, you'll see that some of the areas are just black and white where the frames would be, but I pretty much drew every small little piece, and then we put that digitally, but everything was small. So I had to like trace out the size of each frame, tiny, like I had like maybe like 40 or 50 different size little puzzle pieces that were placed inside each frame piece. And I thought that wood would be great to use because I already was carving wood grain. So I was like, why not use Makahuanga to really replicate that? And so I really had a fun time just replicating textures and patterns, and I think it was fun to do.
And I have to say the quality of the illustrations in the book is wonderful, that you can see all of these different media in the works.
Thank you. And they're in pen. I did pen drawings too, so the people, they weren't there. So I remember we had a meeting and they were like, yeah, we need some energy. I was like, what do you mean? This is it. And they're like, no, we need some people in it. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want the people to be doing? And they're like, we're gonna make sure we capture, the music in the room. And I said, okay, well, let me see what I have. So I went on my phone, and my daughter was dancing. She posed for me. So I said, let me make two of her. I always tell this joke because she's one person, but her personality is like two people. So that's why there's two of her as a twin in this book. And so she's there, and it didn't just happen to be there because in the beginning, I was just gonna do like just males waiting to get their haircuts. But then she's like, Mommy, she popped in when I'm carving. And she's like, Mommy, where am I in the book? I said, oh, you're right, you're not in here. So I said, you really wouldn't be in here in the 90s. You wouldn't be in this barbershop anyway, dancing around, But I said, I'm gonna put you in here. It's a new age, And so I put her in the barbershop. So it was really nice to put personal touches, even in the front of the book, on the dedication page. The art director helped me put in a betta fish. The fish died. So he had a fish as well. So I put our fish in the front of the book. So it's a lot of symbolism as far as like my own life and just who I wanted to document and put in there as well.
Well, I think the book is a beautiful testament of your personal history, of the research that Jeffrey has amassed, the wonderful story, and really one of the things that is so interesting is that Elijah has had this bit of a resurgence. So he had this big exhibition at the Barnes a few years ago. We now have You Gotta Meet Mr. Pierce. So why do you think people are so interested in him still?
Good question. People like Bill Traylor and Elijah Pierce and several others, they kind of got lost in the outsider art kind of phenomena that was taking place, and because they don't really fit into that mold. They're not folk artists either, because folk artists, from my point of view, are people who kind of carried on certain traditions that whether they be pots or canes or whatever. These were men artists who had an individual expression that they had. So I think when the curators at Barnes kind of put him more into modernism, that they found an avenue to bring the work in. And so they started comparing the work to the work that was in the Barnes already. The Barnes is filled with work from that time period, from the 20s to the 50s or whatever. So so I think that's what did it. And it was really rough because it was right in the middle of COVID when that show was up. And so we were having a grandchild and we didn't even get to actually go. But there's a lot of photographs from the same collection in that book, so that was kind of fun. That's the only thing I can think of is that, it's an American story, I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, there was just a show in Canton called The American Journey. But, our culture has kind of not wanted to include Southern blacks in the culture, not just in art, but in other things. And so it's kind of nice to some attention. I mean, we still have a long way to go, but there's some attention being given. You guys doing something like this, I think, is a great thing as well.
I'd like to add in as well, just to kind of go off of Jeffrey, but I feel like, in general, like, I feel like when this story first started, it was we were in a state of unrest. There's a lot of things that's happening around 2019 and 2020, and I felt like it was a perfect time because museums started looking at like what was happening in the world around us, and they're like, okay, well, how are we able to document that through our collections? So there was a big thing. Like people were like, well, people were scrambling around trying to make sure that their collections were like diverse and that they had equal, voices and everything. But why not use folk art? Why not look at other cultures and other artists that have been telling these stories about our history, but they've been overlooked for a reason, right? If you can think about politically, socially, to a point where African Americans weren't even to show their work in museums or in galleries. It happened, And I feel like the canon was broken. When everything was happening between 2019 and 2020, everybody was like looking at their admin, their board, their collections, because no one wanted to be outed as that museum that wasn't properly making sure they was, being held accountable for what they were showing for many years. And so I felt like Elijah is that. Like, he was doing Watergate, like, he was doing not just his life, they were religious stories. He did every story that he came in contact with or he had experienced. And it wasn't made up. It was for real. And so it made sense that, that this book had to come out during this time because for so long, stories were overlooked. And they're still overlooked. Books are being banned. We're still going through this. When the book came out, I thought they were going to ban our book because we were trying to show this is the history of Elijah Pierce, because there is a scene in there when they said, look, we want you to do the area where Elijah and the angry mob, that first came to me. I was like, wait, how am I going to put this in a children's book? And I was like, I had to really sit with it. And during that time, protests were happening, and I was in Hoboken, and we're kind of landlocked in a 2-bedroom apartment, and you couldn't go anywhere unless you were essential. So I was like, wow, I have to figure out, what's happening in the world around me, in crowds, and how crowds make you feel in different situations. And I had to put that in a children's book. So taking that scene, looking at different areas and seeing what I could key in on to make sure this story is told by that particular scene. It was a bleed, so it went across 2 pages. And so, and that when you see that piece in person, when you see a piece on the photograph, it captures the emotion, how he felt trying to run for his life. And I read that story today to kindergartners, and they sat and listened to every little bit in pieces. Like it's full of like him, it's full of history, it's full of his words and and like what he believed in. And I felt like Chiquita and Carmella did a really excellent job of capturing that in a way to engage just to the youngest student, to the to any age people. But all that to say is that it was a perfect timing that we were able to take that not that particular scene, but just take how we were able to use storytelling as a way to document and share, what's been happening. And I think it's just perfect. So
I mean, to add to that too is that while the canon was broken, I think there's a new paradigm, and that comes out of academic. Really, the writing that's in these catalogs has taken this field to a very different place. I mean, you talk about the Elijah Pierce show at the Barnes. I mean, Theaster Gates writes in the catalog. So I mean, it's a very interesting time in that regard, because people are building that paradigm, this new paradigm up. And some people, I see shows around where, when you start reading things that are kind of written the way in the old school, they just seem so old and out of date. And you see that in big museums from the National Gallery, on. And so, but it's kind of fun to be part of the new way of thinking about it. So.
Yeah, great. So, before we end our conversation, I just want to let you talk about some projects that you're working on.
I just wanted to show the picture, the group picture that you put together for me.
The family photos.
This is kind of So in 1982, around the time of this Black Folk Art show in the Corcoran, I went to Ohio to visit Elijah, and he gave me the name of family members who lived all through the South, from Tuscumbia, Alabama, Memphis, Tennessee, Johnson, Tennessee, Top Center, Baldwin, Mississippi. And these were all people who he had given pieces to over the years. And some, you'll notice there's two groups that don't have the piece anymore because either they used it as firewood or it got destroyed in some way. And the one in the center, you can see on the left, the piece has been split, the wood, you see like brown, but they saved it anyway. And then, this piece here was in that photograph of Elijah and his wife preaching, and it's kind of disappeared. We don't know where that is. And the one on the upper left is Mary and Joseph and John, I guess. See the pyramids in the background, but it's a black Jesus. So I took this trip and I visited all these people and I took photographs, and some of the things got lost because I left everything where it was because I just thought that was the best thing to do. But now I just wish that in some ways I've been trying to figure out where this is just so that it's not lost to the ages, So you asked what I was doing next.
Yeah, and I have a little trailer for one
So
of your
right now,
films.
I did a film about Bill Traylor that came out a year and a half ago in the theaters, and now it's on public television on a show called Afro Pop, and this is this is the trailer for it. The trailer, we call it.
So much of Bill Traylor's work is gone.
It's almost like someone did something and vanished.
Hambone, where you been?
Traylor is probably the greatest artist you've never heard of.
Papa's gonna buy me a mountain.
We're talking about the realm of mystery.
Bill Traylor, an artist who began drawing late into life, was not recognized until after his death, but is now seen as one of the most important artists of the 20th century.
He liked drawing on dirty boxes.
Director Jeffrey Wolf infuses tap dance, poetic performances, and illuminating perspectives to journey through the work of an artistic genius.
When I see Bill Traylor's work, I see it, movement. I feel jazz. I feel past steps.
Now, hey.
Bill Traylor, Chasing Ghosts,
Now, hey.
on Afro Pop.
Now, hey.
So that's on PBS
It's on
now.
PBS right now, yeah. And it's actually on YouTube for, you can stream it on YouTube, but just the full film.
And Jennifer,
So I'm
you've been busy with the book?
I've been doing book tours, and so the book came out January 31st, so I feel like I'm still just getting into the book tour. It's been a lot of fun traveling to different cities. We went to Woodrow Wilson Elementary School today, saw a couple kindergartners. I went to Charles Drew, and this is a very special trip because that's the first school I taught at as an art teacher. And I went back to the school where I wasn't working, but I was the featured illustrator, and it worked out. I saw like 150 kids at one session. Another one was another 50 or more in the music room. And it was just, the energy that day was just amazing because I knew that was the foundation of where I was when I first started teaching. And one of the teachers, who was a music teacher, he was there. He was a music teacher. He's still there. And so in between, when they got rowdy, he'd play a song to calm them down, and then we'd try again because they were really excited, And so it was just organically, it was a beautiful thing to capture some videos of them singing. And I feel like I'm really enjoying it because my home is also working with children. And so it's a good fusion of fine arts, illustration, and education all at the same time. And I also have, I'm starting an open studio series. I'm in Savannah, Georgia, so it's a really touristy place. So I said, well, why not make me a place to go? And so people pay $40 for a bike ride. I pay, $25 to make a candle. I said, well, you can pay $25. You can come to my studio, look through the flat files, buy something, buy a book, entrepreneur, that's Elijah's inside of me. And so, so I have Venmo and everything. So I've been trying different ways of how to promote my art. And in conjunction with that, I have a solo show downstairs. So I'm in Sulphur Studios, which is like it's a nonprofit. So downstairs they have a gallery and they have 26 other studios. And so I'm doing the open studio. Notice there's no S on the end because I'm the only person doing it on Sunday when no one else is even there. And so I'm just trying something new, and I'm really enjoying being able to have my work downstairs at the same time, and then inviting people upstairs to the studio. So I've been promoting it on public platforms, calendars, and trying to figure out how to send it out. So I'm just trying a different business model to get people to see art as an experience and not as, oh, it's nice, but no, oh, it's nice and you need to purchase something. So I'm trying to make it more like an entrepreneur thinks I have to sustain myself. And so it's really great because I also added a digital component. Please don't analyze, but I'm starting out into filmmaking. And so I taught filmmaking at Pingree School for like 5 years, but I never made anything publicly to show. So I worked with a SCAD professor, and we did Mad Mapper, and we had 2 projectors that went across the wall, and so I have Space and a Space Girl. There's some music playing, Lift Me Up by Rihanna singing in the background, so I added a digital component to go with the theme of my show, which is Children of the Sun, with dolls in space and Space Boy, Space Girl. So I'm having a lot of fun because it was originally at the Brattleboro Museum. So this is the second time I've been traveling to a different place, but in a smaller setting. And I'm really enjoying the interaction of the community and welcoming it to Savannah. And I got like recognized as in Savannah magazine. It's this magazine that has like to do restaurants and like the dentist. It's always in everybody's dentist office or our doctor's office. It's like this magazine that people go to. And so basically, I got recognized as 6 local artists to collect. And so I'm kind of just trying to play off of that and getting people to come to my space and open it. It's my first time having a studio, and usually I don't even like people in my space, but I'm just trying to do something different. And I'm going to be doing a reading for children in a book, in an artist talk with a well-known author in town. So I want to also bring in partnerships with local artists and bring into my show. So I had like the Will Penny helped me with the digital part, and then Trelani is doing the art talk with me. So just pulling in the resources of the community and bringing it together for the show. And I think that's all I have for there. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So that's what I'm doing now. So, yeah, that's enough.
So I want to give our audience time if they have any questions for Jeffrey or Jennifer. Oh, thank you.
I'm really curious, since you use so many blocks to print, how do you register all those colors?
I watercolored. I wasn't going to be able to I would never be able to finish in time. So like usually when I do Japanese wood block, I'm registering each colors. But for this book, I watercolored in the areas that you see color. And
so
then,
you can do it either way. You do it either way.
Yeah, but usually I don't watercolor wood blocks. Usually I'm putting in every color. But for this, I wanted to have mixed media. So I wanted the watercolor to just look like watercolor. Because when you do watercolor paint with Japanese wood block here, it's a solid color. It doesn't look painterly. So I wanted the painterly background in the areas that are white.
Okay, because I was looking at that, so that's pretty amazing.
Did you paint it on the block, or did you paint it onto the print too?
I painted.
Did you print the black all first?
Yes.
And then watercolor the areas actually on the printed piece?
Yes, yes. But in the if I'm doing a Japanese wood block as like an addition, then I'm painting right on the block and I'm printing that impression from there. But in this case, I painted on the actual print.
And what about the material? When you had material, were you printing? Did you glue any material onto the block and then ink that material?
No, I ink first.
You reproduced it as part of. You hand painted patterns.
I hand painted it, hand inked it, and after I did the inking and the painting, then I did the collage last, because if I would have put the paper first, watercolor, the watercolor would have wilted the paper. So the paper component was like the last step, because you would have messed up the paper if you would have put the paper first.
Very good, thank you.
So then what was the next process to make the book? They photographed each print that was finished?
Then after that, after each page was done and the mixed media was applied, then they was scanned and lots of proofs and plenty of proofs and a lot of proofs, and then saying yes, and then we printed the final book.
And how long is this whole process, start
It's
to
like
finish?
a year. It's a year and a half. Yeah, it's like a year and a half. Yeah, so by the time the work was done, I had a timeline, which was different because I never had a timeline to make an art. That's just a show. So I had someone I was held accountable to make sure I had the thumbnails done. I had to have this amount done. And so then once everything was completed, then we had to ship it off. And you had that wait period of time of it getting there safely, praying that it gets there. And then when it got there, then the scans and then the proofs began. And then that took more months. And then you had to wait for all the books to be printed. And then it came out January 31st of this year.
You know, you didn't introduce Chiquita, but what's interesting about Chiquita Mullins, who's one of the authors of the book, is that Chiquita's been working on material about Elijah Pierce for how long? 10 years?
Give her the mic, give her the mic.
I mean, if you think about
With a play, yeah.
It started with the play,
Yeah.
and that started in 2004, but it hit the stage in 2010.
Right.
So that was a 6-year process. And then Carmella came to see the traveling version of the play, and that was in 2014-15. And we met, and she said, oh, I really enjoyed the play. I write children's books, but you like to write children's books like last year's with me. And of course I said yes. And so that was, 2014, 2015. And so then, here we are, 2023.
20 years later.
Wow, so 20 years.
That's how hard it is to do this.
Yeah.
So, other questions?
Well, I'll invite all of you up to our reception where you can say hi to Jeffrey and Jennifer and Chiquita. We'll also have a book sale and signing, and I hope you take time to see the exhibition, which is also upstairs. So please, another round of applause for Jeffrey and Jennifer. Thank you.